for property damage and had your insurance claim denied?
This is Eric Dick. I think it's important that you know your rights. Hurricane Harvey may have been the most costly storm in history, and if your home was damaged and your insurance company did you wrong, well, you have the right to hire an attorney and sue them. You have the right to call me for a free consultation at 833-3HARVEY, 833-3HARVEY. Don't let your insurance company take advantage of you. Know your rights.
Call the Dick Law Firm now at 1-833-3HARVEY.
A Houstonian claiming his religious freedom is being denied might soon see his lawsuit against the city dismissed.
And it appeared that Judge Kyle Carter was thinking about dismissing the case, saying that Philip doesn't have standing.
Philip Paul Bryant filed a lawsuit in 2017 claiming his religious rights to charitable giving were being infringed upon by a 2012 Houston Feeding the Homeless ordinance. In the city of Houston, you can give 5 homeless people a sandwich, but that 6th sandwich, that's the one that will cost you.
Could be fined $500 to $2,000, or you could even take the risk with going to jail.
According to his attorney, Eric Dick, Bryant's case may not find a home in Harris County Civil Court.
They're saying that my client, he waited over a year to file a lawsuit since he found out about the law. If people just found out about the law and they want to sue the city for this illegal act, I'm happy to represent them for free. I think that it's a mean world whenever acts of charity are criminal.
To be fair, the ordinance doesn't outright ban the giving of food to the homeless. It just creates a lot of hurdles to jump through to do it lawfully.
My children are a big deal in this, and teaching them how to give to the community. If they want to make 10 sack lunches and go hand them around downtown Houston, I shouldn't have to go to my government office in order to obtain permission just to give those sandwiches.
Feeding rocks. It should not be a crime to feed the homeless. Feeding rocks. A good Samaritan shouldn't be punished for acts of kindness. Feeding rocks. Because it's more of a crime to turn your back on a starving person. Feeding rocks. You shouldn't go to jail for sharing food. Feeding rocks. You can't in good conscience let a hungry person starve. Feeding rocks. Help us legalize charity. Go online and sign the petition. www.feeding.rocks. Feeding rocks.
You need top tax defenders. It's simply too risky to fight the IRS without the knowledge and experience of top tax defenders and their attorneys and tax specialists. Call them now, 713-489-7792. That's 713-489-7792 or online, toptaxdefenders.com.
Opinions provided on the Eric Dick Show are for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. You should contact your attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular issue or problem. The opinions expressed on the Eric Dick Show are that of the hosts and guests and do not reflect the opinions of this station or iHeartMedia.
When you've got big problems, you need to have a big, you need Eric Dick, homeowner insurance lawyer and trustee for the Harris County Department of Education. This is the Eric Dick Show.
All right, folks, I'm back for more, back for a lot of exciting worlds of lawyerism, politics, insurance law, and just all around, just whatever we feel like talking about, I guess. I have sitting with me today Philip Paul Bryant of Kojic Pack and many businesses.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Just jumping in, I'm a homeowner's insurance attorney, obviously, elected to the Harris County Department of Education, which most people don't even know exists. It's really a fascinating organization, which we should talk about sometime. And so Hurricane Florence, that hit, and it hit big.
Yeah.
it looks like it was reduced from a Cat 5 with just crazy windstorms, or maybe a Cat 4 down to a Cat 1. But the big thing there, so you got 100-mile-an-hour winds. You got this just gigantic, like flooding event where you had waves, 80-foot waves, just enormous waves kind of coming through.
I think they said nearly 10 trillion gallons of water is going to be coming in.
Yeah, just a crazy amount of water coming in. And so, we experienced a heavy flooding event here as well with Hurricane Harvey. But so what I'd like to kind of talk about a little bit is what people don't realize is there's different types of kind of insurance that kind of play here when you have a flood event like we did have with Harvey and also with Florence. Florence seems like it's going to be just, if it's possible, worse flooding event than we had here with Harvey. But it's clear that it's gonna be bad, and I'm sorry for everyone out there having to go through that. But so what we can kind of talk about a little bit is your basic different types of policies, where you have your homeowners insurance, your typical your windstorm, fire, theft, that type of insurance. That's where you see normally advertised with your State Farm, Farmers, AAA, what have you. Then you also have, NFIP, which is your National Flood Insurance Program. Now that's an interesting type of policy, and that is it's a government kind of funded, subsidized technically, which there gets all sorts of ethical and interesting questions on whether or not we should subsidize insurance. And there's a long history with NFIP. And in Texas and in other coastal regions, you have like some type of government funded or even government backed windstorm insurance, which we have Texas windstorm insurance. And there's some serious problems we've been having with Texas windstorm insurance since Hurricane Harvey. But looking at Florence, like it looks like it's going to be bad. I mean, Philip, did you see any of the articles or where how big this storm was? Because it was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty scary. And obviously coming out of Harvey last year, so we're just I don't know if there's a such thing as hurricane PTSD, but just seeing water and seeing all this stuff again just kind of scares you, and it's also kind of since we did experience it here firsthand last year, it kind of makes us also want to kind of reach out, donate some stuff. A lot of us have extra clothes and shoes and toiletries, and so I from the people I've been speaking with, just want to know how they can be involved and what they can do to try to help the Carolinas.
That's right. So we got flooded really bad, and a person that really did a good job with the flooding in Harris County, we actually have here today, Chris Daniel, and he can tell us all about the flooding and just the craziness.
Harris County District Clerk.
That is Harris County District Clerk.
10 years, 100 years now, man. He's
about 7.5, 8 years. And Eric, it's a real pleasure as your Harris County District Clerk to be here today, especially on your new radio program.
Well, it's great for you to be here, and of all days, a day not far from whenever Harvey hit, and when we had this horrible tragedy in the Carolinas. And I want to thank you very much, because you did such a good job dealing with all the flooding in Harris County that I don't think anybody wanted, and no one wanted to deal with that job, and you did such a good job with that.
Well, I appreciate that. And there's a lot of backstory that never got told by the media, not because they weren't trying to cover it, but because there were so many heroes and unsung heroes of Harvey. To put it in context for the listeners, as a native Houstonian, I've been personally flooded twice in the city of Jersey Village in 1998 and again in Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. And during Harvey, my own mother lost everything in her home in Friendswood as 5 feet of water descended into her house. And it is an unfortunate experience of mine to have to deal with flooding in Houston, especially with the Memorial Day flood and the Tax Day flood. and how we practiced our disaster plans from both those floods, and managed the courthouse and managed the dockets and managed canceling jury service and getting the word out to the public that, hey, do not drive into a high water, turn around, don't drown at the courthouse. And all that prepared us for Harvey, so that when other agencies had not yet practiced their disaster plan, we were already set up days before with emergency computers and equipments and generators in the various places where we were supposed to be for emergency court.
Well, you guys still, sorry, Eric, but you guys still have a lot of house guests as a result of Hurricane Harvey. I know the criminal court judges and team is hanging out in your building. How does that feel, and what's the plan there?
It's a new normal, and we are all getting along now. There were some growing pains initially. I mean, let's be honest. We had one judge try to throw another judge in jail for not getting off the bench fast enough.
Wow.
And we had some other judges basically kick the DAs out of their suite area into the hallway. And then another judge come back and says, no, you can't be out in the hallway, both claiming fire code violations. But it is a new normal. We are now getting along fine. And unfortunately, it is predicted that not till the middle towards end of 2020 will we be back in that particular building. But when we do get back into that building fully, we're going to have a whole bunch of new elevators, a whole bunch of more elevators, more space in general, because the sheriff is not really moving back into that building. And it's going to be a great facility going forward.
So just a couple things. One, I think would be important for the listeners is to explain what the district clerk does, because I think a lot of people have no clue what Harris County District Clerk is.
The district clerk's office is a statutory office that was created in response to the growth needed in Texas. The basic founding fathers of Texas had your basic 6 or 7 offices: treasurer, sheriff, county clerk, county judge, et cetera, et cetera. But as time progressed, it was very clear you needed more courts. So they created state district courts, your old-fashioned circuit courts where folks would ride on horse and buggy from county to county. And then you had to have a clerk to keep those records. In all other states, the title would be clerk of the court. In Texas, it's the district clerk for the district judges.
Cool. And so your role, currently as a district clerk, what kind of do you do day to day?
Call me the traffic cop, if you will, of all filings going in and out of the courthouse. So when Mr. Dick yourself files something in our courthouse, you would either file that electronically, preferably, or by paper, and we would accept it and then hand it off to a randomly assigned judge for it to then proceed judicially. And then the judge would then assign electronically, hopefully, his order at the end of the case, and you would have an entire file that would normally be paper, by the way, now electronic for anybody to use, view, etc. And that not only saves taxpayer money long term, but it makes it faster and easier, better for justice to proceed. But I also handle, and very unpopular duty, by the way, but a basic constitutional duty, your fundamental right to serve on jury duty here in Harris County.
Oh boy, I bet you're popular, everywhere you go.
Unpopular for somebody in Harris County at least once every 3 years. Now you'd be surprised how many people want to serve and want to be on a jury. And as time goes forward, we're going to continue to implement technology to make that faster, easier, and better as well. The other major function that we do, by the way, that most people don't realize is we do passports.
Well, that's excellent. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about a lot of great stuff with Chris Daniel. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is Eric Dick and Philip Paul Bryant's
wingman.
He's wingmanning it today. Thanks, guys. I'm still learning the triggers. She was trying to tell us I wouldn't.
Now, and then we can keep talking about the flood. Talk about how.
Yeah, we'll talk about the flood for a while. We got a bit of time. I wanted to kind of go into some other stuff. They want me to talk about Prop B, which I want to talk about Prop B anyway. And then we can talk about some political stuff too. Like I liked what was going on with Patterson and Bush. I think that's kind of interesting. At least deserves discussion. Sure. We'll just run into it. And we got a good Facebook Live audience going.
good supporters of veterans. I want to thank all you small businesses out there.
Oh
who
man,
donate,
so you made it.
whether you have cash or
Well,
whether
that
you gave
16
something.
curve,
I
once I
wanna thank
got
so many of you
trapped,
who've gone out and
having
donated
doing that
time,
one exit
volunteer.
was toast.
I want to thank so many of you who just
Yeah.
raised
It's
awareness.
bad. It's worth it.
With PTSD, have a place to go.
I want
So they let you in. They just let you right in.
It's 877-717-PTSD. That's 877-717-7870.
Oh, you know, I look official.
877-717-PTSD. Veterans.
Oh,
Hey,
man.
Philip, are you going live as well?
We're
Cool.
all behind you. We're all here from you. There
Cool,
is
cool,
an answer.
cool.
Call Camp Hope. It's free to you. 877-717-PTSD.
This is
You have an
your
opponent?
and I think it's
I do.
important that you know your rights.
Have they doing anything? Or they just
Sat next to me today at the Delta Sigma Theta event.
You have the right to call me for free consultation.
It seemed pretty serious.
7 rights.
She didn't have any money,
337
so
rights.
she's relying on.
Don't
The
let your
suite.
homeowners
The
insurance
suite.
company take advantage of you.
Oh, you never know
Call
what's
me
gonna.
today at 833-7 rights.
As your homeowner's insurance
You never know what's
claim
gonna
been
happen.
denied or underpaid,
Hey guys, how are y'all
call
doing?
the law firm at
You never know what's gonna happen. They could go.
833-7 rights.
I think we can talk about that
Well,
some.
occasionally I like to stop and just say thanks to all
And you've
you
done,
good
to be
folks
fair,
do for us.
up and down, left
Our
and right. You've
friends
done
at
a good
US
job.
Coins have
You
been
really
sponsoring
have.
the show. They
We ain't
sponsor
finished.
I'm not saying you are,
Camp
but
sponsor
what we can talk
lots of
about is
stuff,
like
Red Country Clubs that we
the
can
connection
bring
you've done.
in.
Use social media,
And they
interact
say
more
that
with all
you
the
folks, when
lawyers,
you are selling your coins,
use
you are
their
bringing them
information, the family
to US
courts,
Coins,
guys trying to
coming in,
change.
you're bragging on the show, and we appreciate it. You're
Yeah,
having a great experience.
also work
US
with the
Coins on
judges.
I-10 outside the loop.
It's the thing of family court where you can securing,
713-464-6860.
Come on, yeah, we're
This is
piloting
what
that right
it's
now
on.
with David
$10,000
Sarscourt.
or more to the IRS.
You want me to talk about that?
Professional help, top
Yeah.
tax
That's
defenders.
all good stuff.
If you receive a letter from the
E-resets
IRS,
and
don't ignore it.
e-hearings.
If you're being audited, have years of unfiled tax returns, or worse yet,
That's a
you're
lawyer
being
show.
issued a wage garnishment or bank
People
levy
listen to lawyers,
using
they like
top
to know
tax
that.
defenders. It's simply too
That's good.
risky to
Then
fight
you
the
are.
IRS without the
Good.
knowledge and
Also for
experience
the
of top
lawyers
tax
listening,
defenders
you gotta know
and their
who
attorneys
you
and tax
are.
specialists.
Yeah.
Call them now,
Have someone access
713-489-7792. That's 713-489-7792
lot.
or online,
Make it easier for people to
toptaxdefenders.com.
deal with.
Try new endless pan pizzas at
You really
Seasons,
have.
available in both Meat Eater and Supreme. Now
Are we allowed to
open,
talk about the
starting at
Texas Lawyer
$5.99.
Facebook
It's the
page since
best
that's not
price for
political?
endless pan pizza, only at Seasons.
If we
Price
talk
and
about all this,
participation
that's
vary.
fine.
Restrictions
The
apply.
only
Visit
thing that might mean is that
Seasons.com/and for details.
Burgess, she wants to come up here. She can. I don't care. I'll talk to Marilyn. What? They're looking at me. What are you guys trying to tell me?
Should we be talking right now?
No, I was just playing on the internet, talking to all my friends on Facebook. That's what I was doing. Anyway, so we're back. We're back with my radio show, and Philip O'Brien is helping me out today. He is just a fantastic go-getter, and our special guest today is the district clerk,
The one and only.
and Chris Daniel. What we're talking about is how Hurricane Harvey really devastated Houston. But what I'd like to talk about is some of the great things that Chris Daniel has done with the role as district clerk, made kind of the office more accessible to fellow lawyers. He's been, to be fair, he's been just a fantastic district clerk. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, he really has tried, and I can tell. But so, tell me, Chris, about all the stuff you've done.
Sure. So electronic courts, for example, started as a pilot program in 2002 under Charles Macri with 2 basic courts, and was expanded under subsequent district clerks up to 8 courts with a few permissible courts. And under our administration, we went totally electronic in all civil courts. By the time the mandates came down for family courts to go electronic, we were already halfway there. And by 2015, all family courts were electronic. And with that, we had another mandate come down by the Texas Supreme Court that we need to have criminal courts electronic, with the exception of juvenile.
And that the criminal courts, that you're talking about criminal discovery, which is kind of you've just completely opened the door, which is kind of a good thing, I think. But so tell me about the criminal discovery.
Well, through our website, as you're tied to the case as an attorney, you can now get directly from the DA's office all their electronic discovery videos, DWI videos in particular. And the whole purpose is to make it faster, easier, better for the attorneys to represent their clients and seek justice.
Now, what's interesting, I kind of want to give a little backstory here, is so when I started practicing law about 10 years ago, I did a number of criminal cases. How you used to get your files, you'd have to, and usually the DA would freely give you their stuff, but sometimes they really didn't have to. And you could serve them discovery. So you couldn't just mail them that. You'd have to go to the court, you know, kind of file something at the courthouse. So you'd have to either wait for a hearing or actually drive down there, file this stuff. And it was really a pain. A pain, you know, where to do any type of discovery. But that's gone now. So now attorneys, you know, doing criminal defense work in their comfort of their own home in their pajamas at, you know, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., whatever time, they can e-file their discovery to the, you know, the DA's office, and it's a complete different world. And we aren't, you know, we may have been. Are there other counties that do this?
No, in fact, Fort Worth in Dallas were trying to do something along these lines, and the best they could do was get the charging instruments online. Which is also part of our ongoing process, because not only did the Supreme Court mandate that something be filed electronically into the case, but we recognized that to be totally electronic, we had to have all facets of justice electronic. That includes e-warrants, e-subpoenas, e-citations, and so on and so on.
So I just want to kind of step back. You're saying no other county in Texas out of the 254 counties does electronic discovery for criminal cases?
Not that to my knowledge. Most counties are accepting electronic filings per se, and then going behind the filings back and printing it out on a printer and sticking it in the paper file, which defeats the whole purpose of electronic filing. The goal is to not only be faster, easier, better, and more indexed so that the attorneys can do a basic Google search on their own case and find rapidly what they need to represent their client, but to save taxpayer money.
And be environmentally friendly as well.
Well, that's a token benefit, because when you're saving trees, you're also not having to pay for all that toner and printers and paper and so on and so on, plus personnel.
Well, it just makes basic sense. Easier access to justice, costs people less money.
But it's also a safety issue. When we implemented e-subpoenas, that saved 32 positions for the sheriff's office to then put back into the courtroom as bailiffs that no longer had to process subpoenas because it was a automated electronic process. And that came vital, especially after Harvey, where we were doubled up in the courthouse.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, you've really done a good job there. So how about like where you've tied in social media to the district clerk's office? Why don't you talk?
I have a love-hate relationship with social media. My first race was for the Board of Trustees for Lone Star College System, of which I won. And I beat the board chairman by using a little-known website called MySpace. And MySpace was revolutionary at that time. And now we're having Facebook and Twitter and so forth. And I have attorneys even contact me on LinkedIn and Nextdoor, the app. And what we do with all that is when they contact me, I personally respond. We get their email address, and we get them funneled to the right location to get their problem resolved. And the beauty of that is that, especially on the Texas Lawyer Forum on Facebook, the various groups and pages, they're able to not only get their question answered, but help other lawyers who might have a similar question get their question answered. It's not always the answer they want to hear. For example, there's a snafu going on right now with sensitive data documents, where the Texas Supreme Court has asininely created a category of sensitive data, where when you file something electronically, and I'm sorry to get technical, audience, but when you file something electronically and you market sensitive data to protect your client's best interest, well, guess what? We're not allowed to show that online at all. That became such a problem because if Eric files something, he knows he filed something and I can't show it. How do we explain that? So we created an electronic index that at least showed that it had been filed, but you still had to download and view elsewhere. You couldn't view it online. And that has created a whole bunch of headaches for lawyers out there with this new restricted category. But again, that's just trying to solve the Supreme Court's problem for them.
Well, it sounds like you've done the best you can do. Yeah, so
he also implemented passports in his building, because that wasn't done before under I think Jackson.
That wasn't done under any district clerk in Texas, except for in Harris County, except for the surrounding counties. And so we decided to take the bull by the horns and say, look, Stan's right here with his birth certificates. Why can't we just finish the gap and come up with a passport service? I'm sorry, the post office has set the bar so low that when we get these comment cards coming in about how wonderful we are, it's like, well, it's a no-brainer. We want to serve you, public. We want you to come in and have the best experience possible while you're already downtown for an unfortunate reason in court, or to get a birth certificate, a marriage license, a DBA for your new business, a liquor license for that kind of business, or you're serving jury duty. Come on down anyway and get your passport. Get a new passport, get it renewed. And oh, by the way, we go through Philadelphia instead of Baltimore, and therefore our passports are processed faster, and therefore it takes an average of about 14 business days instead of 4 to 6 weeks to get your passport back.
One other question. I know a lot of viewers are wanting to know, is there something that that can be done about those lines in the morning to get into the court? And I assume
Yes.
it's a lot of it
Yes.
is because of the criminal court being combined.
Correct. Now, once we're back in the jury assembly building, which unfortunately became an unnecessary 11-foot deep swimming pool during Harvey, once we're back in that building, a lot of those lines will go away automatically. And it has a beautiful remodel set, or it has its own kiosks and its own covered entryway. But Constable Precinct 1, Alan Rosen, actually handles the security that comes in and out of the courthouse. And he has been piloting programs to put people through the other courthouse security doors so that they're not having to necessarily bottleneck right there at the front door. But they could go to the juvenile building, or they can go to other buildings where there are metal detectors. We can't get rid of the metal detectors. We've got to keep our judges and our lawyers safe. We're dealing with a lot of hot topics at the courthouse, divorces, criminal cases, etc. And we need to keep everybody safe.
Feeding the homeless.
Feeding the homeless. But at the end of the day, thankfully, Constable Rosen is working hand in hand with our office to pilot these different ways to get people funneled into the courthouse through other buildings.
Sure. We're going to take a break.
That's their music.
Yeah, that's the music. They're giving me a hint. This is Eric Dick. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Chris Daniel and Philip O'Brien's right here with me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Too fast? Too much?
No, that's fine.
Wasn't too technical, was it, Brian?
Yeah.
Some people
Are you still talking about MySpace? You're talking about what dial-up internet back then?
Tom was a fan, man.
Yeah, you just talking to close your MySpace account, by the way.
Is it still up? I thought I deleted it. I thought I deleted it 10 years ago. Oh.
Oh, man, I never had a MySpace. That was for musicians.
Oh, it was
Back on Facebook Live.
I've been talking some.
Feeding Rocks. Can't in good conscience let a hungry person starve. Feeding Rocks. Help us legalize charity. Go online and sign a petition. www.feeding.rocks. Feeding Rocks.
A lot of good people watching. What they want. I put the number. I put it on the Facebook. You guys want to call in? Call in. Let's go. Let's talk about maybe. Let's talk about politics a little bit.
This is Mario Lopez. So I'm planning to celebrate.
There's a lot of juicy stuff to talk about. A lot of juicy stuff to talk about.
Just stay the night. Don't drink and drive. It's just not worth it. Because the DWI would cost you up to $17,000.
We had the Lincoln today in the Yes to Spotters parade.
You would also lose your license. So plan
We're talking about
for the Monopoly car that we use in all our parades.
Go to jail. So message from TechStop.
And I had a parade today. I had a block walk kickoff, and I had this candidate forum. And now y'all.
Just hustling. Hustling. It is grinding.
I've been hustling.
Been up till what, 7 in the morning, run around.
You talking local, state, or national politics?
I want to talk about Jerry Patterson, where he's a Republican and he endorsed George P. Bush's opponent. And the reason why and all that, I think that's kind of interesting. Is at least people were talking about that. I'd also like to talk about a lot of people are upset that Willie Nelson's playing for Beto. and just kind of, man, I think Cruz is going to win that. I'm voting for Cruz, but that's an interesting. I think there's something there. At least interesting.
Disclaimer: Geico cannot guarantee you will be close as happy as a clam. Unquote. The Geico legal team cannot
I
accurately
think it was pretty neck and neck until the National Party starts.
They poured a lot of money into it because they got scared.
What's there to be happy about? A clam's all like, oh, I'm so happy I didn't get turned into New England clam chowder today.
What's that going to do? I don't know.
That's so fun to say. What were we talking
And also, we need to talk about Prompt B with the firefighters.
Yeah. I meant to go by there and get a couple of
It feels sometimes like everything in life has gone against us. Take a break from anxiety. And
I'll
fear.
explain some of the city council issues with the cenotaph in San Antonio
right here,
and how they have already kind of boxed Bush in a little bit with regard to that.
Okay.
Now, I mean, he needs to take a leadership stand. Because, yeah, they already voted. Yeah, they've already.
I think they're hey guys, I'm back. Okay, so we got Chris Daniel here, we got Phil Paul Bryant, and let's talk about some politics. I know everybody loves talking about politics and maybe some gossip, and let's see where it goes.
Man, that's how you lose more friends.
Politics.
That's how you lose more friends.
Well, you know, I don't have many friends to begin with. When you don't have any, it's not hard to lose them. Okay, so what I found interesting is one of the person I think highly of is Bonnie Lugo was having a bit of a fit about how Jerry Patterson endorsed George P. Bush's opponent. And the whole kind of backstory, there's a lot of backstory with the Bushes and Trump and all that type of stuff. But I think really kind of the tie-in here and why a lot of people are just genuinely upset with the Bushes is George P. Bush's role with the Alamo and how a lot of people like my family were tied. We have relatives that fought in the Alamo. We have relatives basically in every Texas war. The first alcalde of Columbus is a relative. It's just like the history, at least in my family, and many other residents in Texas, they have such a deep, deep Texas history. And they're just highly offended, highly offended is in how he's trying to commercialize, in essence, the Alamo. Have you heard anything? What do you think about that, Chris?
You know, it is a time for leadership. And I think with the best of intentions, the current land commissioner's office delved into trying to expand, preserve, and protect the Alamo. And unfortunately, too many businessmen and too many consultants got involved, particularly those that were not from Texas. And we have a mess on our hands. And a lot of it is a technical issue that is more complicated than a 20-second soundbite. For example, most folks don't know that the San Antonio City Council has already voted and kind of boxed Bush in as far as moving the cenotaph. The wonderful monument that's been there for over 100 years, is my understanding, that really celebrates the defenders and heroes, State Board of Education, of the Alamo. And what the problem with that is that once they have by ordinance said that you shall move this, unless he steps up as a leader and says the dickens with your city council ordinance, it looks like he's kind of kowtowing to what they're demanding, what this Democrat city council is demanding.
Well, I mean, it is that, and that's true. He doesn't seem to really.
It's a time for leadership.
He's not. He doesn't seem like he's listening to his supporters. At least he's not listening to people in the Republican Party that have deep, Texas roots that just kind of have an emotional connection to. All this historical type of stuff, especially in an environment where we're looking at, maybe removing Sam Houston's statue, which I strongly disagree with. But you have that type of environment, and a lot of people are emotional about this.
This becomes a reduction to absurdity, reductio ad absurdum, to make a legal term. And at some point, we are doing our children, our grandchildren, our posterity a disservice by destroying history. And in some cases, it is better to preserve a bad history in place as a warning than it is to just destroy it and whitewash it and sweep it under the rug.
And I agree with that. I mean, that's a completely different topic. If you're talking about Confederacy and the Civil War, that's a completely
Hey man,
different
you brought
topic.
that up. I was just talking about history in general.
But if you're talking about Texas history, it's like something just vastly different, because you had people that were like Texas leaders refusing to succeed, refusing to go through that whole thing happening.
Well, let's take it back to the Alamo. You were talking about history here, and I was talking about tearing down history and sweeping history under the rug. Part of the problem with the expanded Alamo plan, or the criticism of the expanded Alamo plan, was you had an artist from Philadelphia who was trying to kind of de-emphasize the Battle of the Alamo itself and expand the 30,000-year history of what happened in that San Antonio region. And the problem is that that's not why people come to San Antonio. They don't come to San Antonio even to find out more about the Rough Riders, who were trained in the backyard of the Alamo, who were key and vital to not only the future of President Theodore Roosevelt, but also the Spanish-American War. They come because of the Battle of the Alamo, the icon of the battle. And for an outside Yankee to come in here and basically de-emphasize the purpose of people coming to the Alamo and expanding it the way that he did to increase the emphasis on 30,000 year history, that again is, you're not communicating to your Texas base, you're not communicating to your outside visitors who come to this UNESCO site, and your folks that want to know more about why Texans are this independent, can-do spirit.
Yeah, I agree. And it's bad news whenever you're messing with the Alamo. And it can't get any more Texas than the Alamo. People jump up and down. They have a strong emotional connection. But how about the fact that Jerry Patterson, a pretty well-known, in a lot of different pockets of the Republican Party, you have him actually endorsing a Democrat, which is a big no-no. But and what do you think about that?
I think he's making a statement. He must also be aware that he's never going to run for office again, because when people cross party lines to endorse Democrats, particularly in a race that's clearly going to be won by the Republican, you're committing political suicide. So he must firmly believe that this is his hill to die upon, and that he is going to try to make a statement to all that the handling of the Alamo has not been the way that he would have handled it, and that with the best of intentions, more leadership needs to step up to get the show on the road to protect Texas history.
I'll just be upfront. I can't vote for Bush, and I don't think I can vote for the Democrat either. But there's no way I'm going to vote for George P. Bush. Just no way. I think too many of my family members would be upset with me, both living and deceased. But so do you have any opinions on the Alamo, Philip?
Yeah, well, I think I was more concerned. I won't say concerned. I don't necessarily accept the fact that it would be political suicide to step across the aisle. I think in our PAC, Houston Area Coaching PAC, we do this on a regular basis. I think you have to judge and look at the candidates for who they are,
That's
what
fair.
they stand for, their
That's
background, some of their vision as well. Because I know Democrats that love Chris Daniels.
That's true. That's true.
And it's not necessarily because he's a Republican. It's because they think he knows what he's doing. They believe in the direction he's taking the district clerk's office. And it also works on the other side as well. Republicans just can't vote for someone just because they're Republican. Democrats can't vote for someone just because they're Democrat. I know we say it every election cycle, and I know every election cycle they go in and they just click that straight ticket candidate. But I think we have to go down ballot, look and see exactly who's on the ballot, what they're standing for, and a lot of it is kind of hard because you got 70 or 80 different elections, just for the judges, and then you got
75 judges on the ballot. We set the Guinness Book of World Records at one point for having one of the longest ballots in North America.
Right. So I know it's difficult to do research on a couple hundred candidates just to go vote, but it's our civic duty. You know, people sacrifice for our right to vote and sacrifice to get there, and it does them justice because these people do affect our daily lives. You know, whether we like to admit to it or not.
Well, to be fair, I don't disagree with anything you just said, Phil. I just think that for Jerry to make such a bold statement in a statewide race, he must think that he's not going to run for anything in the future. Now, there's a maxim that my favorite state rep from Kingwood has to say, Dan Huberty, which is if you're explaining, you're losing. And where George P. Bush has himself in the corner right now is that in order to explain this very complicated and very hot topic of the Alamo and where its future is going, he has to go very detailed into a lot of technicalities that the listeners aren't willing to take the time to read about or listen to about. And when you're explaining, you're losing.
So we're talking about statewide races. Let's go to another race that's kind of a bit controversial. Is the Ted Cruz versus Beto. And I find that interesting. You have the National Party, you have Trump coming down supporting Ted Cruz, but you also have Willie Nelson, who's having, doing some stuff for, Beto. You have a bunch of national money from the Republican Party being poured into Ted Cruz's race because there's genuine fear that he may lose the race. I kind of am, I doubt it, but there is truly genuine fear around a number of pockets. And you also have the polling kind of tightening. One poll at least had it one percentage vote away. Some others 4 or 5, points away. Philip, why don't you start off? What do you think about that?
I think it's a referendum on Trump. I think Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are, I wouldn't call them best friends or second best friends in the whole wide world, but they're pretty aligned as well as some of their politics. And so for this race to even make the headline is, you're right. I definitely think that the numbers show that a Republican, whether it be Ted Cruz or whoever, the numbers show that should be a Republican seat. But for it to even be close or to even be a part of our conversation just shows you that not necessarily Ted Cruz, but in my opinion, his connection to Trump, I think is more so a vote against Trump in that particular seat, in my opinion. And I get them emails from the Democratic Party, the Harris County Party, and so I see the angle they're using as far as fundraising and get out the vote efforts, and they're making that connection.
But what about like the play that Ted Cruz isn't a likable person and that Beto is a much more likable person, a nicer person? And do you see that
a little bit more charismatic?
I see that being pushed, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. I just see that being pushed. What do you think, Chris?
The reason why the National Party is concerned about this race is they're seeing what I'm seeing, where Beto has a rally in Grimes County, Texas. You know what's in Grimes County, Texas? Bunch of cattle and a company that builds the most drill pipe in North America. That's it. And here you have 400 people show up to a rally in Grimes County, Texas. When you have that kind of phenomena occurring, even if it's just every Democrat was 400, it is amazing to see that this enthusiasm is going on across the board. And that's why people are scared about what's happening with Beto. That's why they're concerned.
We'll dig more into it in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll get back on that and maybe finish up with Prop B.
Yeah.
Jeez. I think it's good stuff. Just people are fascinated by it. It's good stuff to talk about. You don't think so? I think it's
well. So what I'm going to lead into about Beto is how he's basically using Trump tactics to define the race, and how Ted has waited too long to take control.
Well,
winding people up, get along and live.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think it's more fascinating than anything.
It's that time of the year.
Well, then I'll follow that with getting technical about straight ticket voting and how
that's true.
Beto is a threat because if a Republican votes for Beto and they don't do the normal thing where you pull the lever and then change your vote, then they're going to have to vote all the way down the ballot. And after 75 judges, they may just forget to vote for their county judge.
How about 2 years from now? Because that's going to happen in 2 years from now.
That's right.
That's right. And frankly, you don't. If you owe $10,000,
All right, if you want to make that, I see the pitch.
You had to go down the Confederate statue thing, huh? I wasn't talking about that.
I had to go down on it a second. I had to go down on it a second. I had to just kind of flirt with it. Just see what. I had to go with it for a
That's
second.
a no-win. There ain't no winning on that.
No, we didn't go into too deep. I had to go there for a second. You know, I'm a sucker.
Just the Sultan's just blowing up your phone as we speak.
This is Eric Dick, and I think it's important that you know your rights. If your homeowner's insurance company is denied or underpaid your claim, you have the right to hire an attorney. You have the right to call me for free consultation at 833-7-RIGHTS. That's 833-7-RIGHTS. Don't let your homeowner's insurance company take advantage of you. Call me today at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Has your homeowner's insurance claim been denied or underpaid? Call Dick Law Firm at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Hurricane Harvey hit us all. It feels sometimes like
Oh,
everything
man.
in life has gone against us. Take a break from anxiety and fear.
So we had a
Go to
2-week
radio
break.
with Steve
Yeah,
Allen
we'll be back on
every
this
Sunday
more.
from 5 to
It's
6
kind of
p.m.
fun.
Right
How
here
long's your
on
show?
WRC,
Just an hour.
50 AM.
Oh, we're almost gone.
We're almost done.
You wear many
Let's finish it up.
hats.
That's
The
all
new
right.
business
Let's finish it up.
The buying toner for the
How about
company
12 more
share.
minutes?
The sifting through tons of resumes hat. You can throw away that
fun.
last hat.
Yeah,
at
it is.
Indeed.com.
I just don't think I
And
have
posting
the
your job
commitment
can
or energy
include
to
screener questions
do
that
much
give you
more.
less time-consuming route to a short list of qualified candidates.
Well, now you know it's tough for all these radio guys. I mean, think about Michael Berry having to come up with an hour every day.
Yeah, so he also doesn't have a job, and not elected. That's all he does.
I
His
just
job
saved
is.
hundreds of dollars by switching to
he's a good guy,
Geico.
but it's
I'm
just
as
a lot.
happy as a clam.
Disclaimer.
I don't necessarily want to be a radio personality. It's fun. I enjoy talking about stuff. Enjoy all the friends.
Yeah, you
Facebook.
missed out meeting Steve Johnson from
Oh,
KOL.
I saw. Yeah, Danny wanted to go out. I can only do so much. Can only do so much.
What were we talking about? Geico. 15 minutes.
Get lost. And he was nearby. When he the other side of the street. Okay. Hey guys, we're back. We're gonna wrap this thing up. We're gonna put a nice, good, tight bow on it. We were talking about Beto's race with Ted Cruz, and Chris Daniel was pontificating on, as he does from time to time, on some very interesting and intellectually stimulating, views on that race. You want to go back and?
You betcha. You know, with Robert Francis O'Rourke, the Irishman from El Paso, he is defining his race the way that Donald Trump used the media against the Democratic Party. And he is defining his race in such a way that Ted Cruz has waited way too late to get back on offense and to take the definition away. And so now you have Ted Cruz basically scrambling, whereas before he was almost kind of refusing to debate Beto. Now you have Beto saying, hey, I'm too popular. I'm on this show, on that show, and national media here, national media there. Why on earth would I waste my unearned popularity to lose it all in a debate to a clearly master debater that would be very, very good at basically dissecting and eviscerating Beto on any number of topics. At this point, it is a ground game, and there's going to be a lot of national media coming in. But here's my concern, Eric. With Philip Paul Bryant votes straight Republican normally, which I know he doesn't, but if he were to, and now all of a sudden he's enamored by this John F. Kennedy-esque candidate on the Democrat side, so he decides to vote for Beto. If he doesn't do the educated thing, which is to vote straight and then circle back and vote for Beto, if he goes one by one, by the time he gets halfway down the ballot, he may say, the dickens with this, I've got lunch, I've got plans, I've got to get on a radio show with Eric Dick, and decide to quit voting. And then he might miss our wonderful county judge. He might miss the district clerk's race, the county clerk's race, the county treasurer's race. He might miss voting for the propositions. And that is a terrible thing, because that is what the party fears, is somebody is going to be enamored by Beto and say, well, you know, I love Greg Abbott. Yeah, I love all these other races. but I'm a little tired because I forgot to vote straight and then circle back and change the race.
I hope they forget George P. Bush. If they are going to forget anybody,
Well,
they need to miss that one. So let's kind of what do you think about this Prop B? A lot of people have been talking about Prop B, and I love the firefighters. I can't help but want to support them, and I do support them in Prop B. But Chris, what do you think about Prop B?
You know, as a non-resident of the city of Houston, it would be a shame for me to communicate on this, but I'll go ahead anyway. I'm basically supported by the base of both sides. I'm openly endorsed by HPLU, full disclosure, and I hope to get the endorsement of the Firefighters Union as well, because I'm already endorsed by the rest of their AFL-CIO brethren. At the same time, I understand why we got to where we are. We're in a situation where the cops have been basically screwed with by the various mayors since Mayor Lee Brown. And these issues didn't go away. And so they came up with a legislative solution to help them. They invited the firefighters to the table, but the firefighters had their own program going on and their own plan. And whether that was a good plan or not as good of a plan, whether they should have played nicely with the police officers or not, is water under the bridge, because now we're at this point in present time. And they have decided to take this to the people as a legislative solution instead of going to the Texas House like the police officers did. Whether that's the best plan or not, again, I don't live in the city of Houston, so it'd be dishonest of me to go further, but I want the folks listening to understand that we arrived at this because of a lack of leadership at City Hall. Period. It's not Sylvester Turner's fault. It's not Anise Parker's fault. It's not Bill White's fault. It goes all the way back to Mayor Lee Brown.
I think it goes before that, but I don't think it. I think, okay, let's kind of take a step back. You've got firefighters making $27,000 a year, which is not very much.
How much?
$27,000 a year.
Is that starting or added?
That's starting.
Wow.
You start at $27,000 a year. And I know there's arguments, okay, they only have to work 2 days a week, but they have to work 24-hour shifts on those 2 days a week. Good luck finding another job. And sure, they have benefits, but you talk about a job where you're running in a fiery building. I think people need to, whenever I ran for mayor, every time I've ran for city council, I've always followed Orlando Sanchez's, motto. Pick a few things, do a good job at it. Public safety, infrastructure, basic city services. That's where you want to spend your money on. Under public safety, you break that down. That's the firefighters. That's the police officers. We want them to do a good job. We want them funded to do a good job. And though I love parks, and I live next to a park, ride my bike on a park, I'd rather be safe and have firefighters, come to my house. Hey guys, remember I support you whenever my house is on fire. Remember I support you. I'd rather them come to my house and make sure we're safe, make sure my daughters don't burn up in the house, because that would break my heart. And that'd break almost anybody's heart if their house, burns down. But my point is this. If we're talking about being, conservative, at least fiscally conservative on, with the city of Houston, spend the money where we say we're supposed to spend the money. Spend it on the firefighters. Take care of the firefighters because we need them. At the minimum, if people are, feeling spiteful towards Sylvester Turner, it's kind of a spit in the face to vote for, this, because it limits, it kind of forces Sylvester Turner to spend more money on the firefighters. So I strongly support it for a very, very, very large amount of reasons. Some of them, full disclosure, my dad was a firefighter, a captain and a senior captain at a number of, I think, two 66s and 67s. So I'm just inherently biased towards firefighters. But on the other hand, as a Republican, as a conservative Republican, I can't help but, it's one of the things we should be doing. Philip, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that you have to support the firefighters. And I think they're just basically asking to be on par with their counterparts at the police department, if I'm not mistaken. So you have to support the firefighters. If they need raises, give them a little extra money. I think initially were asking for 3%, but they just were just backlogged from prior years that Now they're asking for a larger percentage to try to make up for past years. And if that sends the city, puts the city in a position where they don't necessarily have the revenue to cover it, then that's going to force them to look at other programs and other possible wasteful spending to try to accommodate for that. And so I support the firefighters. I think there also is going to be another proposition about the drainage,
the rain tax.
The rain tax. And so, from what I understand, that the courts aren't going to make them refund that money back to the residents, but they're going to allow them to be a little bit more clear on the language. And so, the city has some explaining to do in this municipal election cycle.
Well, just as a final word to the listeners, I just want you to understand that after this proposition is voted for or against, with regard to the firefighters, that this problem is not going to go away.
Right.
We got to this problem because the city was upside down on its budget, and various mayors and city councils have tried creative solutions to solve this to no avail. The cops ended up going to legislature to try to seek a solution. The firefighters are going a different direction to seek a solution. With regard to the drainage tax, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys. This is it. We'll see you. I'll see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks very much. You guys have a great weekend.
That was my diplomatic answer.
That was very diplomatic.
Thanks, guys. We're heading out.
But it's the truth.
Hi, this is Eric Dick, and I think it's important that you know your rights. If your homeowner's insurance company has denied or underpaid your claim, you have the right to hire an attorney. You have the right to call me for a free consultation at 833-7-RIGHTS. That's 833-7-RIGHTS. Don't let your homeowner's insurance company take advantage of you. Call me today at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Has your homeowner's insurance claim been denied or underpaid? Call Dick Law Firm at 833-7-RIGHTS.
Breaking the law, one meal at a time, feeding the homeless.
It is morally wrong to make it a crime to give food.
A Houston man who feeds the homeless because of his faith is suing the city, challenging the established charitable feeding ban. The often debated ordinance has banned sharing food in public groups of more than 5 people without city permission since 2012.
The city says you can give food to 5 people, not 6. What are you supposed to tell the 6th person? I met my quota today?
The city wants to dismiss Philip Paul Bryant's lawsuit.
That's a crime? What does this world come to? It's a sad day whenever trying to prevent a fellow human from starving is a crime.
The city says the ordinance aims to curb trespassing and littering, both of which were already prohibited in the municipal code prior to the passing of the ordinance. While some Houstonians are in support of the lawsuit,
I really hope he wins his case, and I really hope they lift those sanctions so we can be able to give more to the needy.
So if you're willing to help more than 5 homeless people, you should be able to do that.
Some even challenge the city's support of their citizens.
The city isn't going to take care of their homeless people. That's their people. Somebody got to take care of them. So why can't we take care of them?
A question Houstonians will continue to ask as long as the ban remains.
Feeding rocks. It should not be a crime to feed the homeless. Feeding rocks. A good Samaritan shouldn't be punished for acts of kindness. Feeding rocks. Because it's more of a crime to turn your back on a starving person. Feeding rocks. You shouldn't go to jail for sharing food. Feeding rocks. You can't in good conscience let a hungry person starve. Feeding rocks. Help us legalize charity. Go online and sign the petition. www.feeding.rocks. Feeding rocks.